Hey everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We're out here at Pelham High School where we're going to get you prepared for the first week of the playoffs. The 2018 postseason is upon us. The regular season came to a close last Friday night, so we're going to touch on our 5 playoff games that we have coming up this Friday night. Pelham, one of those teams that will be in the postseason, as will the Thompson Warriors. Briarwood will be there, Montevallo, and Vincent. So we're going to talk about all 5 of those playoff matchups that we have going on across the county this Friday night, but we're going to do this week's show a little bit backwards because I want to recap the final week of the regular season as well. And we had some impressive games last Friday night, and several teams really just battling to send their seniors out on top with a win or get some momentum moving into the offseason and heading into the 2019 football season next fall. So we're going to touch on all that, do our SCR Stars of the Week segment first, so we can name some of those best players and performances from last week and go over the score sheet from that final week of the regular season. Then we'll jump into the 5 playoff matchups that we have taking place this Friday night, and it should be a lot of fun. Obviously, these teams are used to playing their best game, bringing their best game to the table every Friday night with the regions that they compete in. But when it comes to the playoffs, your opponent's going to be giving you their best shot, so you have to be ready, obviously knowing that the loser is done for the year. None of these teams want their season to end on Friday night. They obviously want to keep playing and have strong seasons. So we're going to talk about all of that on this week's Shelby County High School Football Show, but we're going to jump in and start with our SCR Stars of the Week segment first. The last week of the regular season, as it does every year, brought us some good storylines, some excitement along the way, and it was a special season for a lot of these teams, even the ones that will not be making the postseason. They have a lot to look forward to in the future, and I can think of a few teams off of my head for certain reasons, but we're going to go down classification by classification with our SCR Stars of the Week and give you some certain players as well as some teams to look out for moving forward into 2019. And obviously we'll start in the 7A classification. The Oak Mountain Eagles senior running back Luke Purser had a strong performance this past Friday night, 24 rushing attempts for 143 yards and 2 touchdown runs, as the Eagles close out the season with a dominant 38-8 win against Center Point. That was a game that was close for a while, 10-8 at one point, really near the halftime break, but Oak Mountain able to turn things up in the second half and go on a run and end the season on a strong note. And another player that really stepped up, one that we expected to do some big things this season at the receiver position for Oak Mountain, was Trey Allen. He ended the game with 3 receptions for 72 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. So 2 of his 3 receptions were touchdown catches, as he and Evan Smith had some big connections in that win for Oak Mountain. And speaking of Evan Smith, he's going to be a guy to look out for next year. Obviously, taking on a Center Point team that was 2 classifications lower, you can't take too much away from it for Oak Mountain, but at the same time, it's a way to build confidence for some of the young players moving ahead into the 2019 season. It's also a chance for the seniors to go out on top, which they were able to accomplish. So those guys had a special performance, and this is a team I think that's going to be very good. They have a lot of young freshmen, sophomores on this team, and athletes at the school in general that I think are going to continue to help this program grow over the next couple of years under head coach Chris Bell, who I think does a fantastic job there in the most difficult classification and region that there is in the state of Alabama. So I do think that bright things are ahead for the Oak Mountain Eagles. For Spain Park, similar situation. Obviously, Oak Mountain was snapping that long win streak that had continued through the year. Spain Park did that a few weeks ago when they beat Oak Mountain, and now they've ended the season on a 3-game win streak after their dominant 42-10 win against Shades Valley. And a big reason for that, Mason Pronk and Jalen Henderson both continued to have strong performances on the offensive side of the ball, as did the defense. The defense continues to play good. It's a defense that was good all season long and was just waiting for the offense to kind of step up. But Jalen Henderson ran for 100-plus yards and a touchdown, and that helped the senior top a 1,000-yard performance rushing season there for his senior campaign there at Spain Park. So a big final year for Henderson. What was expected of him? They had a lot of high hopes for him, and they paid off. He came out and really every week, even when they were struggling, he was one of the ones that continued and was consistent throughout the season. He was basically like the defense was all year, except on the offensive side of the ball with his consistency. And Mason Pronk, really over the last 3 weeks at the quarterback position, was able to start playing well and ended the season on a strong note over the last 3 weeks, helping lead the Jags to that 3-game win streak. And in his final game there, had 191 passing yards, including 4 touchdown passes, and then added a 5th touchdown with his legs on the ground, as well as 21 yards rushing. So Mason Pronk really turned things up the last couple of weeks, complemented Henderson perfectly, and that team really got things going. That's something, a 3-game win streak after a tough stretch throughout the season, that I think is going to help this team moving into the offseason, give them some reason for excitement coming back next year. And there's going to be a lot of turnover on the team next year and moving forward with a lot of young players, but I do expect this to help. I think head coach Sean Rainey is one of the best coaches in the state. As long as his players are buying in and take advantage of this 3-game win streak to end the season, I think they'll be fine in 2019 as well. Now we'll move down to the 6A classification, and we'll talk about some of those players and some of the outcomes that we had in the final week of the regular season. We'll start with the Helena Huskies. Obviously, a tough 0-4 start for the Huskies this season. They bounce back. They don't make the playoffs with that loss to Pelham last week, but it's a Helena team that won 4 of their final 6 games after that tough stretch, which shows that under first-year head coach Richie Busby, they were able to buy in, believe in his system, and it's really incredible. It takes a lot for these young players to believe in their head coach after they've gotten used to another head coach for several years, and for somebody to come in and really turn things around. Not just if under a first-year head coach, if you start slow like that, it's tough to get them to believe that they can still win in the second half of the season, and Busby was able to do that. And a big reason was because of quarterback Luke Stamba, who's going to be back next year quarterbacking the Huskies as well. But he ended the season with 4 touchdown runs, all 4 of Helena's touchdowns, in a 28-14 win against the Calera Eagles. So a strong way for him to end the season, a strong way for the Huskies, obviously, to end the season. Almost upset Jackson Olin as well, which would have given them wins in 5 of their last 6 games and given them a 5-1 record over that span. So this is a team that's on the rise and is going to continue to get better with Busby getting more guys interested in football and showing them that they can win at the 6A level. But speaking of 6A, we'll jump down to the Chelsea Hornets, who I think are going to be also in the same boat under Dustin Goodwin. It was his first year this year. They struggled early on, were able to win 2 in a row, almost closed it out with 3 wins in a row. They do fall 10-7 in the final week of the regular season, but the future is still bright. They've got a lot of young players. I think their quarterback situation is going to continue to improve, although they do lose Turner Griffin. I do think that they have some young guys that are ready to step in, improve themselves as well. And Collier Blair, still a sophomore, and he's one of the SCR Stars of the week, had a strong final game of the season with 100-plus all-purpose yards and Chelsea's only touchdown on a 42-yard catch from Griffin's arm, 42-yard touchdown catch there for Blair, who's going to continue to get better and get more size as he grows there at Chelsea as well. So the Chelsea Hornets, like Helena, will continue to improve, being in that same region classification as Helena. Those 2 teams, I think, are going to battle and have some fun games in the future alongside the Pelham Panthers as well. Jumping down to the 5A classification, a team that's going to continue their season into the postseason and has a chance to make a strong run. We'll talk a little bit more about them later on in their segment. But Briarwood, they pick up a huge win against Hueytown to close out the season. And it was because of Luke Pruitt and J.R. Train-Reno on the offensive side of the ball. But pair that with the defense that's been outstanding all season and the offensive line, which is one of the best in the state. It was just an all-around solid performance there for Briarwood as they pick up that 31-13 win against 6A Hueytown, who was 8-1 in region champions. But Luke Pruitt had 103 rushing yards and added a touchdown on just 13 attempts in that game. So obviously a strong game on the ground for him at the running back position. And J.R. Train-Reno, who's traditionally been just an athlete all over the field, he had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game as part of his strong performance, but also added 4 receptions for 80 yards. Only put up 22 yards on the ground, but was able to add 80 yards on 4 receptions through the air, which is just speaks to his athleticism and what he's able to do across the entire field, and also completed a 30-yard pass in the game as well. So he's a strong athlete and will be used a lot going forward in the postseason for Briarwood. Shelby County, we're going to talk about them as well. They closed the season out on a strong note with their 48-33 victory against St. Clair County, and I've talked about it all season. They had their chances to prove to me that they had changed. They were a different team than the one we saw a year ago under head coach Heath Childers, and he told me in the offseason that they made some changes, and I really do think that they did, and it showed off in that final week. They could have folded, given up on the season, but they battled not just in the final week, but in the final 3 weeks, despite 2 losses in the 2 games previous to the St. Clair County win. They scored 44-plus points in both, scored 44 on the dot in both of those games, and almost pulled off wins to make the playoffs. But ended up losing those 2 to Central Tuscaloosa and Jemison, but bounced back with a strong win against St. Clair County, which shows to me that this team has turned around and made the changes necessary, and I think they'll continue to get better and better over the coming years. But speaking of getting better, the Montevallo Bulldogs have obviously impressed us this year. They're another team that's going to the postseason, but we can't ignore 3 of their players from being SCR Stars this week, and it starts with J.J. Evans. I mean, the kid's just been unbelievable this year. He is the real deal, getting offer after offer from Division I schools, LSU, Tennessee, Auburn, and so on, and the kid has made a statement, made a name for himself this season for Montevallo. He's averaging 161 yards per game, and is actually leading the state right now with 1,612 receiving yards, which is 3rd all-time on the season reception yards list. And with a strong performance this Friday night, he can actually overtake the number 1 spot and break the record. He's 123 yards from tying it, and with him averaging 161 yards per game, I don't have any doubt that he'll have a chance to break that record this Friday night with a strong playoff performance as well. But he helped lead the Bulldogs to a 42-24 victory against the Lincoln Golden Bears, and that was a huge win for Montevallo moving into the postseason with a ton of momentum now, sitting at 9-1 overall after the completion of the regular season. This is a team that showed they can compete against some really good football teams over the last few weeks of the season. I expect that to continue into the postseason. A big reason for that is 2 more offensive playmakers in Dion Gilliland and as well as quarterback Malik Inabanet. Inabanet ended the win against Lincoln 20 of 27 for 334 yards and 4 touchdown passes, and topped the 3,000-yard mark for the season as he leads the state in passing. So J.J. Evans and Malik Inabanet has obviously been a lethal weapon and combination so far this season. We'll see if that continues into the postseason. But Gilliland, last week head coach Brandon Wilcox said that he wanted to get the running game going, and that was going to be key heading into the postseason because you can't be too one-dimensional against some very good teams in the playoffs. And Gilliland had a strong game on the ground, ran the ball 18 times, had 2 touchdowns and close to 100 yards in that game for Montevallo, and also added 54 yards receiving. So Gilliland really stepped up, had a strong game out of the backfield, and continued to show and make his presence known as well there for Montevallo. So those are our SCR Stars of the Week. Obviously an incredible regular season. We mentioned a lot of those names several times throughout the season. Some started to turn it on late and really made a name for themselves, and definitely deserve the credit and to be recognized. But to everybody, congrats on a strong season if your season is over. If you're coming back next year, good luck next year. Keep working hard. Obviously, big things are ahead. If you're graduating, then congrats on such a successful career with your school. To everybody that's made Shelby County sports so successful, and your team specifically. I know all your coaches are going to miss you, and we'll definitely miss covering you and wish you the best of luck moving forward. Now back to the normalcy of the show. As we do every week, we're going to go down classification by classification, break down the first week of the 2018 postseason and each of the playoff matchups that we have, all 5 of the playoff matchups that we have taking place on Friday night, a couple on the road, 3 of which are going to be at home. And we're going to start with one of those home games in 7A. The Thompson Warriors, our lone 7A team to make the postseason this year, and they'll be hosting Florence this week in really a game on paper that they should win. They should win with ease. But like I said, this is the postseason. Anything can happen. You're going to get your best, the opponent's best shot every week, no matter who you're playing. And Thompson is the better team in this matchup, but they're going to have to deal with a team that's ready to go and ready to take down one of the best teams in the state. So on paper, you expect this to be a win by the Warriors, and I think the biggest thing is off paper, and I said this in my predictions as well for the week, but Thompson, they were scheduled to go down to Crestview, Florida to play a road game last Thursday. They would have had an extra day of rest regardless, but that game got canceled due to weather, gave them an extra week of rest, and we saw last year Thompson struggled with Hillcrest Tuscaloosa in the final week of the regular season, a 6A team. They almost lost that game, but were able to hang on and win. And so this year I think it really honestly benefits them not having had to have gone down on that long road trip to Florida and playing a physical game against a very good team from the state of Florida. So now Thompson's not only going to have that extra week of rest, the last thing in their minds is going to be that really last 2.5 quarters against the Hewitt-Trussville Huskies, where they trailed 28-0 in that game and came back and just dominated the rest of the way to win 63-49. So to have that in the front of your minds going into a playoff matchup against a team you should win, you should feel like you're the better team. You should use that as confidence and really come out. And if you do everything that you know how to do, if you do everything that you've done throughout the season so far in 2018, you're going to be just fine, and you should pick up a win in this game. But on paper, you have Florence, who finished third in Class 7A Region 4, and their winners of 3 of their last 4 games. And are also coming off a bye week just like the Warriors are. So they have some things that are trending upward and some reasons to believe that they can compete in this game because they're going to have fresh legs as just like the Warriors will in this contest. Before the bye week, Florence was able to take down Sparkman 21-14. That's a game I would have seen Thompson winning a lot bigger. So you tend to lean towards Thompson winning this game fairly easily, and that becomes even more evident with the numbers of offensive points per game and defensive points per game. But Florence right now averaging 25.1 points per game, giving up 21.5 points per game, and Thompson's doing much better in both of those categories. Thompson averaging 36.8 points per game, which is more than 10 points more than Florence, which I think is going to be the biggest deal in this contest. But they're also only giving up 17.3 points per game, and that includes the 49 points that they gave up to Hewitt-Trussville. Without that, it's closer to 14 points per game. So Thompson overall on paper, the better team in this contest. And I really do think, whether it's a shootout or not, Thompson's going to have the better athletes, especially on the offensive side of the ball, to be able to score a lot of points and pull off the win in this game. But their defense, they've been out to prove a point really throughout the season. And I expect them to show up and really try to make a statement this week. And they really showed that turnover after that game, or during that game against Hewitt-Trussville, where they were struggling in the early going, and then were able to make some huge adjustments at the halftime break. And Coach Freeman talked about that after the game and really commended his coordinators and defensive coaches for being able to make those changes at halftime. I think that carries over. They've had an extra week to prepare and really get their checks right and know what they're doing going into the first round of the playoffs. But I just don't see any way right now on paper that Florence is able to pull off an upset win. They will give it their best shot, and Thompson better be ready for it. But at the same time, I do think Thompson's the better team and should advance on to the semifinals, that's where it becomes key, though. If they are able to take care of business on Friday, that semifinal matchup will definitely be a team that they've already seen once this year, whether it be James Clemens or Hewitt-Trussville. So either way, James Clemens, a team that Thompson handled pretty easily in the first game of the season in the Challenge of Champions down in Montgomery, but it's a team that their quarterback was a little bit slow and injured to start the season. Now he's really healthy and has performed well over the last several weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if James Clemens pulls off the upset if he is playing that well, simply because they're going to be able to score points against a Hewitt-Trussville defense that's giving up a ton of points throughout the season. But either way, no matter who Thompson faces in week 2, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch that game unfold should they take care of business this Friday. But take it one week at a time. We'll see what they're able to do against Florence first. Just like the Thompson game we just got done talking about, the Pelham-Hartselle game tends to favor Hartselle heavily on paper, but differing from that Thompson prediction that I just gave you, I really do feel like Pelham has a strong shot to pull off the upset in this playoff matchup on the road Friday night. And everything obviously on paper tells you to take Hartselle, the Tigers, in this matchup, sitting at 10-0 through the regular season. It's a team that won their region championship. It's number 1 seed versus number 4 seed. But for some reason, my head just tends to tell me that Pelham has a strong chance to pull off the upset. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. Obviously, Hartselle's the better team in this situation. They probably should come into the game on their home field, pull off an easy win. But at the same time, Pelham is a team that's shown me some things throughout the season that if they play their best game, they're going to have a strong chance to end up pulling off the upset. Now, it's a team a Hartselle team that's playing so solid on the defensive side of the ball that's what tends to make me think they're going to win this football game. But it's a Pelham team that's played really consistently throughout the year on the defensive side of the ball, but it's been the offense that's kind of made some mistakes. If their offense can play a consistent game, which is going to be very difficult against this Hartselle defense that's given up no more than 17 points in a game this season and has outscored opponents 82-0 in the last 2 games. This is a tough Hartselle team that's playing very good, number 5 in the 6A classification. But if Pelham's able to come out, make some plays, come out with some passion, fire, and they can't be timid, obviously. You can't think about it too much. You've got to come out and do your instinct things. But if they're able to take care of the ball and make plays, I think they're going to be in this game in the fourth quarter. I think they'll have a chance to pull off the upset and wouldn't be surprised if they end up doing it. I mean, if you look at the schedule and break it down, this is a Hartselle team. Their best win in that 10-game stretch was really a 14-7 overtime victory against 5A Briarwood. It's a 5A Briarwood team that's obviously very good, but at the same time, I think Pelham would have had the same chance to win that game 14-7 in overtime. So, and you look at other games throughout the schedule. It's also a Pelham team that lost to Minor and Jackson-Olin 2 games. Minor, a team they easily should have beaten, ended up losing that one. Jackson-Olin, a very good football team that nobody really expected them to beat, but they still should have won that game as well. So it could be 9-1 versus 10-0 instead of 10-0 versus 7-3 in this game. So it's just one of those on paper that obviously is going to favor Hartselle head-to-head, but at the same time, I just have some sneaky suspicion that Pelham's going to be in this game, and if they are in this game in the fourth quarter, they could pull off the upset. The Briarwood Lions couldn't have picked a better time to have their best performance of the season last week. A 31-13 thumping of 6A Hueytown, who was a region champion and was 8-1 on the season. A team that I thought was a very good football team and still do think is a very good football team. And it was just Briarwood went out, played their physical style of football on defense and offense, and it led to a strong 31-13 victory against their best opponent to date, in my opinion. Obviously, I think Ramsey's a very good football team. And I also think Hartselle earlier in the season was a tough test. They ended up losing both of those contests, but I think Hueytown is right up there with those 2 opponents as well, which shows me that Briarwood is doing what they need to do heading into the postseason, and that's improving specifically on the offensive side of the ball, something they're going to need to make a deep postseason run. Now, their first-round matchup against Valley shouldn't be anything too much to worry about. It's a Valley team that is playing very good on the defensive side of the ball, giving up just 16.9 points per game, but they're also not scoring much at just 17.9, so just a point more on the offensive side of the ball than they're giving up defensively, which isn't going to help you in the postseason, especially when your first-round matchup is against a defense that's giving up 7 points per game and is one of the best defenses across the entire state, regardless of classification. So the first round, I'm not too concerned about Briarwood in this game. It's a Valley team that's coming off a 14-2 loss where their defense scored their only 2 points with a safety against Benjamin Russell in their final game of the regular season. And Briarwood's defense playing as well as it is consistently throughout the season and against much, much better teams, against like Ramsey, Hartselle, and Hueytown, all being in the 6A classification a year ago, 2 of which still are. I think that this Briarwood team should be able to do what they want on the defensive side of the ball. If their offense is able to live up to it, continue to improve this week, that's going to be another key, is improving on the offensive side of the ball this week with Jonah Carroll there at quarterback. But J.R. Train-Reno and Luke Pruitt have been playing so well. Train-Reno moving out to receiver has really helped the team out, and Pruitt has had a solid season on the ground. They're playing so well right now that I fully expect them to really form that great relationship with the defense and continue to play as well as they have throughout the season. But they need to show that progress because the weeks after are where this playoff run for Briarwood is going to become key. They have the chance to face 3 number 1 seeds in a row, and the next week is probably their most difficult opponent. They would take on number 2 seed Viger most likely in that second round, and that's a team that would be tough to upset. And you're going to have to be playing your best football. If they continue, they're going to continue with number 1 seeds really all the way most likely up until the state championship, because they would have Demopolis in the 3rd round and then Ramsey after that. I think that those 2 teams will both win up to those points. So it's going to be a tough trek for Briarwood this season. Obviously, if they had beaten Ramsey and had the 1 seed, they'd be sitting in a good situation because the path from that side of the bracket is much easier But I think that this is a Briarwood team that's out to make a statement, wants to show that they shouldn't be forgotten heading into the postseason. A lot of teams, a lot of people have written them off already, dropping down in the rankings, and they just don't think they're as good as some of these other teams. And I'm here to tell you that Briarwood, they have players that believe, they have players. This is a senior class that is extremely strong, and they can't be counted out. This is a team that's going to fight for everything that they want, and I won't be surprised if they're standing back in the state championship. It's going to be a tough path there, but if they play with their heart and desire and the defense that they have, they're going to have a chance in every game. I think their defense really does keep them in every game that they're in. It's up to the offense to make a couple more plays and have some explosive opportunities throughout the postseason. But don't forget about this Briarwood team. There haven't been too many teams that have impressed me more than the Montevallo Bulldogs throughout the 2018 football season. They finished the regular season at 9-1 thanks to a 42-24 thumping of Lincoln last Friday night. We talked a little bit about it in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. That was a Lincoln team that I thought really could beat Montevallo if they played their best game. And it was close for a while, but Montevallo, as they have done all season, turned up the pressure in the second half, specifically in the fourth quarter, to make that game look a little bit more distant than it was throughout. And that's the thing that head coach Brandon Wilcox has preached on throughout the season. Something I wrote down to mention is that they want to play 4 quarters. It's a team that has to play 4 quarters if they want to win these big games, and they've proven to me time and time again that they can do that. I don't know what their head coach thinks about it, but I know that that's something he's preached throughout the season, something that he wants his players to buy into, and so far it looks like they're doing so. They did it in some big games this year, specifically Sipsey Valley, Shelby County, and then Lincoln to end the season. A couple of those were very difficult matchups that they had chances to lose if they didn't play in all 4 quarters. So it's a team I expect to continue to do so. They have another tough matchup in the first round of the playoffs against Andalusia, but it's an Andalusia team that on paper isn't as good as the Bulldogs. They are sitting at 6-4 overall and have won 4 of their last 5 games, so they play in their best football in the second half of the season. So they're going to come in with some momentum, give Montevallo their best shot, and they're doing so well right now because of the defensive side of the football. It's a defense that's giving up 6.4 points per game, 16.4 points per game, and has given up 14 or less in those 4 wins over the last 5 games. So defense has obviously been playing better and better for Andalusia, something to look out for against this potent Montevallo offense, and that's what I think is the difference in this game, though. Montevallo's offense is out there putting up close to 45 points per game, while Andalusia is putting up just 23 points per game. And throughout the season, we've seen that as a key in Montevallo's wins. Whenever they're scoring a dominant number more points than their opponent like that, they've gone on to win those football games. They have had some that have been closer because of good defenses like Andalusia has, but at the same time they make those plays late, and they've proven that time and time again, and they've done so to win those football games. I kind of expect that same trend. I expect a close game throughout, especially in the first half and possibly into the fourth quarter. But the defense has shown they can make plays. The offense has some outstanding talent on that side of the ball. And we mentioned J.J. Evans, Malik Bennett, and Dion Gilliland a lot. Evans is obviously a standout player that if you throw it up to him, he's most likely going to catch it. If you get it to him in space, he can take it to the house. But they've also got several other guys out wide at the receiver position and just several other athletes on the offensive side of the ball that can carry this team as well. So this is a dangerous Montevallo team that I think last week's win is going to give them the momentum boost that they need moving forward into the postseason. They're going to have a tough path as well, but I do think they can make a deep run based on what I've seen from this team throughout the year. And I think it's going to start Friday night with a big win. It's going to be a historic week for the Vincent Yellow Jackets regardless of the outcome. Obviously, they're coming off a tough 56-12 loss to Asheville to end the regular season, but they found out earlier that week that they were going to be part of the 2018 postseason, and it's going to be a tough first-round matchup. Number 8, Abbeville. It's a team that's played well throughout the season and is likely a contender for a state championship. And they're playing well on both sides of the ball, so it's going to be a tough first-round matchup for the Yellow Jackets, but it's a historic moment nonetheless. And from where this program was a few years ago to being winless, they're now in the playoffs for the first time since 2014 and have just completely turned things around. It started with head coach Wiley McKellar in his 2 years there before heading to James Clemens this season, and now it's transferred over to head coach Lucas Weatherford. And in his first year, this team was on the verge last year, probably should have made the postseason a season ago, but now they break through in 2018 in Weatherford's first season at the helm, and it's a group of players that really deserves to be there as well. They fought so hard and have worked so hard, and even though there's been some blowout losses along the way, it's a team that deserves to see that hard work pay off for everything that does, and that does things for the future of this team as well. With Weatherford, trying to build a program that can head in a positive direction. These kids can now see that positivity, see that belief, and see that the hard work pays off. And with that, it can lead to future success. And under a first-year head coach, for a first-year head coach to do that, that really shows a lot and shows that the team, can change systems and still have that success. So there was a lot going against this team this year, but they're able to bounce back. They're able to make a playoff berth. And it's just a special time. Like I said, the first time since 2014 and just the 19th time in the 90 years that Vincent has had a football team that they are in the playoffs. So just all-around special accomplishment for the seniors and for everybody that's been a part of the turnaround for that program, and especially head coach Lucas Weatherford in his first season. Now, they are taking on an Abbeville team that's posted 3 shutouts in their 5-game win streak to end the season. They've scored 30 or more in all 5 of those games and 40 or more in 3 of those 5 games. So obviously it's a team that's playing really well on the offensive side of the ball and really well on the defensive side of the ball, just giving up 10.3 points per game overall, including those 3 shutouts in a row. And this is a Vincent team that's struggling on both sides of the ball. Obviously, they've had some struggles throughout the year. They're scoring just 20.5 points per game right now. And it's just going to be a tough path. It's going to be a tough road for them in the first round, but it's a chance for them. They get to go out, play a postseason game. That's something they're going to remember for a long time, and it's something that's going to build and help this program's stability moving forward, which I think is the bigger accomplishment in 2018. That's going to do it for our first playoff show of the 2018 football season. I appreciate you all joining in. Obviously, I don't expect this to be the last show of the season. I do expect Thompson, Briarwood, and Montevallo to all 3 advance, and for the Pelham Panthers to have a chance to advance as well. So we will be coming back at you next week from a different location. Most likely we'll be at Thompson High School next week if the Warriors do advance and take on either Hewitt-Trustville or James Clemens. But either way, this is going to be a fun postseason run. Also, basketball has started up, so if your football team is out of it, get out, check out some high school basketball in the coming weeks as well. But I can't wait to see what the 2018 postseason brings us. It's going to be a fun ride, and can't wait to continue to bring you some great coverage throughout the playoffs.